venue or not, because obviously the people in this very small town lived through the terror of this case. They know everything about it. It's going to be very difficult to find jurors that do not have preconceived notions or, frankly, some connection to the victims. The lead defense attorney has a connection to one of the victims also, which was an issue earlier in the case. So everybody knows everybody. It's a small town. Things like the venue need to be addressed. Obviously, we haven't heard yet about the discovery in the case, but there's bound to be voluminous DNA discovery. We don't know whether, other than the knife sheath, which we know about, there's DNA from his car and from his home, and all of that and the cell phone technology require experts to be brought on. So I think this is going to be a slow-moving train, both with all the expert reports and discovery that's still out there.
Yeah, and Latah County is where this is taking place, which is the county that surrounds Moscow, which is, it's relatively small. One would think this would end up in Ada County, Boise, which would be the largest venue in the state. But if the defense doesn't ask for it, then maybe it stays here. This seems to be, Melissa, and if, the hearing is over, so the arraignment is over. The not guilty pleas have been entered on his behalf by the judge. Melissa, if he's running the show or trying to Duncan's point, that that's what his gut tells him with this silence thing, who knows, right? This thing could go October 2nd in whatever county that they want it, and who, just one wouldn't want to assume anything if a person like this is running the show.
No, I agree completely. I think that, considering what he studied for so many years and then the crime that he committed and then his actions afterwards, he is for lack of a better term, a strange bird. And we can only imagine the directions that he may take this. He may take this and try and prove that he is some super I can defend myself lawyer, or he may just try and use his lawyer as a puppet. But I don't see him being cooperative. I don't see him being easy to work with. And I think we're going to be here a while. I think the weeks that they have set aside for this trial are probably going to be needed.
Okay, again, Brian Kohberger stays silent. His attorney says that to the judge when asked how does he plea. Ann Taylor got up and said, "We will be standing silent." And I've just been reminded that Nicholas Cruz did the same thing in Florida during his initial arraignment. He did not say anything when asked how he pled, and we all know that that changed over the course of the proceedings. He ended up addressing the court on a couple different occasions. So let's do this. We'll get a break in here. The rules of the road are, as soon as the hearing is over, then we could broadcast it. Well, the hearing's over, so when we come back, we will be waiting for that feed from the courthouse, and we will be broadcasting it live right here on Court TV, and we'll watch it all together, and we'll also be checking in with our Chanley painter who's inside the courtroom, get some courtroom color, etc. That and much more as our coverage of Brian Kohberger in court continues.
On the next episode of Accomplice to Murder.
Meredith was a good girl.
Until she met Jimmy Robertson.
You were telling me to say, I'm going to kill my parents.
It was like helter-skelter.
She knew enough to know I'm going to...
I guess we'll just have to see what's going to happen. I don't know that I agree with, him not cooperating. He's been cooperative on all the footage that we've seen thus far. So, I don't think he's going to try to defend himself. I don't know where they get that idea from. He pretty much jumped on a lawyer immediately and got an investigation underway, so I'm not sure where, they're coming up with these hypotheses, but we're going to see soon in the future. It is really interesting that he didn't audibly say not guilty. some defendants go that route. I don't know the advantages or disadvantages of going that route. Um, but in that case, the judge automatically enters a not guilty plea anyway. So maybe just to not speak or not utter those words, I don't know. There could be psychological reasons. It could be just playing a game because he knows people want to hear him say not guilty. So he just refuses because he really doesn't have to. I don't know. It's just been an interesting case. So much speculation in this case. So many leaked, alleged, behind the scenes bits of information, which I don't know how much stock we can put into, but I know we all can't wait for the discovery in this case. Court TV is about to jump back up, and they're interviewing some people there at the courthouse. So we should be getting that tape here real soon, and hopefully see what happened live in court. I'm trying to get that up for you. This is all this watch live. I just don't know why it's continuing to. All right, here we go. I don't know why there's no audio on this live because I can hear it.
Not really, but I don't think we should expect that the case is going to go to trial on that date. I mean, it seems like a far enough date that the lawyers, it's important to get all the lawyers to clear their schedules and make sure that there's a date that everyone agrees on. But I think it's far more likely to be a placeholder at this point. There's so much scientific material here that needs to be looked at by expert witnesses, including in particular the DNA evidence and the cell phone tower technology. All of these things require experts to come on board. So I don't think there's any chance this is going to be ready for trial in October, but I think it's a date that everyone can agree on and will much more likely to be a placeholder. And then the other question is whether this case is even going to go to trial or whether his lawyers can try to fashion a plea for him that would be life in prison instead of the death penalty. I think that that's probably something that his lawyers are taking very seriously and having conversations with him with to see if that's even available. It's possible the prosecutors won't offer that, but I think if they were,
Basically, they're talking about death penalty and, if there's going to be a deal, etc. But I'm going to have to figure out why there's no volume here. I apologize for that. It's really odd. So I'm going to be messing around with my computer here, trying to figure that out. Because the desktop audio is open, so we should be hearing it. And I can hear it on my laptop, but I have it on my TV and it's not working. So I don't know what the heck is going on. I'm not the best at this, but I've never had this audio problem, so we'll see. Just give me a minute to see if I can get this to work.
Free Movie Channel has something for everyone. Every day. Sunday nights on In Real Life.
For the baby?
Scripps News journalists take you off the grid.
We were just a bunch of kids with a camera.
Stunts have become more specialized.
And to the heart of the story.
When the pandemic hit, the American dream kind of changed.
There were a lot of warning signs. They just didn't care.
In Real Life, Sunday at 8/7 Central, only on Scripps News. Free Movie Channel has something for everyone. With no subscription or rental fees, Free Movie Channel is the quick and easy choice for first-run films, as well as classic movies. Check out Free Movie Channel today and find your new favorite movie.
I'm Vinny Politan. Welcome to Closing Arguments. There is so much on the line, so much at stake. Well, what was this case really about?
Closing Arguments with Vinny Politan, weeknights at 8/7 Central, only on Court TV.
There's going to be trouble. Let's have it!
Keep your eye open. Some answers to this.
I'll find you, and I'll kill you. Now all I need is a fresh horse, a saddle, and a gun.
Monday morning, trying to get people live. They turned it into family only.
Wheels up 330.
Let's go, let's go! Let's dig deep, figure out who we're dealing with.
We're ready to get the profile. He's growing bolder and more careless. There's no doubt he'll strike again. I want this guy.
There's nothing the FBI does better than a manhunt.
Oh, wait, there he is.
Drive, go!
Here soon. Problem with this app is it just
Weeknights at 8/7 Central, only on Court TV.
it will just play ads and commercials incessantly.
Choice for first-run films, as well as classic movies. Check out Free Movie Channel today and find your new favorite movie.
Creators have lots to juggle when they do this stuff. It looks easy, but it's really not. All right, well, hopefully any minute now
is
they'll
ready
be able
to
finish that
roll. Let's
hearing.
do it. This is Brian Kohberger
I'm very
in
interested
court,
in seeing
arraigned
it.
for the murders of 4 University of Idaho students. Let's watch.
Here we go.
All rise. Thank you very much. Please be seated. Good morning, everybody. We have some people on Zoom here too, so we'll be hybrid. Okay, let's get on the record, please. Thank you. Okay, we are now on the record in State of Idaho versus Brian C. Kohberger, CR 29222803. Mr. Kohberger is in the courtroom along with his attorney, Ms. Taylor. I believe also part of the team is Jay Longston and Elisa Massa, who is participating by Zoom, I believe. The state is represented by Mr. Thompson, Latah County Prosecutor's Office, or Prosecuting Attorney. Ms. Jennings is of that office too, Latah County Prosecutor's Office. Also part of that team is Ingrid Beatty and Jeff Nye, both from the Idaho Attorney General's Office. I'm John Judge. If you don't know me, I'm a Latah County District Judge, and I'll be presiding over this case. So, Mr. Kohberger, you've already heard a lot of what I'm going to tell you at your initial appearance, but I'll repeat it to you because it's important, and I want to remind you of these issues. So I'll briefly cover your rights, the charges against you, and the maximum penalties if you are found guilty or if you plead guilty. So I'm going to start with the rights. You have a constitutional right to have an attorney represent you throughout these proceedings. If you cannot afford to hire a lawyer, then one is appointed at public expense. Ms. Taylor and her team have already been appointed, so that's taken care of. You have a right to a speedy and public jury trial where the state would be required to prove every element of each charge against you beyond a reasonable doubt. At that trial, you would have the right to cross-examine the witnesses called against you. That means to see, hear, and question them, to call witnesses to testify for you, and if you choose to testify in your own defense. But you're not required to testify because you also have a right of silence. That right is protected under the Idaho and federal constitutions, so you can remain silent throughout these court proceedings, and that can't be held against you in any way. What you do need to remember, though, is that anything you do say, other than to your lawyers, could be used against you in a later court proceeding. Do you understand that? Yes, I do.
Okay, thank you. You also have a right to appeal any final decision of the court. And in order to exercise that right, you need to file a notice of appeal within 42 days of that final decision, or that right is waived. Also, if you are not a United States citizen, any finding of guilt in this state could have adverse consequences to your legal status. Do you understand these rights?
Yes.
Any questions about the rights?
No.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Kohberger. So let's go to the indictment. Do you have a copy of the indictment in front of you?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And you see in the heading, your name there, is that your correctly spelled complete name?
Yes, it is.
Is that the correct birth date underneath your name?
Yes.
Are those the correct last 4 digits of your social security number?
Yes.
All right, thank you. All right, I'm going to read you the charges on the indictment, starting with count 1, burglary. That is a felony under Idaho Code Section 18-1401 and 1403. This alleges that you, on or about November 13, 2022, in Latah County, state of Idaho, did unlawfully enter a residence located at 1122 King Road, Moscow, with the intent to commit the felony crime of murder. Count 2, murder in the first degree. That was a felony under Idaho Code Section 18-4001, 4002, 4003, and 4004. This alleges that you, on or about November 13, 2022, in Latah County, state of Idaho, did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and with malice aforethought, kill and murder Madison Mogan, a human being, by stabbing Madison Mogan, from which she died. Count 3, murder in the first degree, a felony under Idaho Code Section 18-4001, 4002, 4003, and 4004. This alleges that you, on or about November 13, 2022, in Latah County, state of Idaho, did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and with malice aforethought, kill and murder Kayla Gonsalves, a human being, by stabbing Kayla Gonsalves, from which she died. Count 4, murder in the first degree. That's a felony under Idaho Code Section 18-4001, 4002, 4003, and 4004. Alleging that you, on or about November 13, 2022, in Latah County, state of Idaho, did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and with malice aforethought, kill and murder Zaina Kernodle. Excuse me. This is hard. I'm sorry. Zaina Kernodle, a human being, by stabbing Zaina Kernodle, from which she died. Count 5, murder in the first degree. This is a felony under Idaho Code Section 18-4001, 4002, 4003, and 4004. This alleges that you, on or about November 13, 2022, in Latah County, state of Idaho, did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and with malice aforethought, kill and murder Ethan Chapin, a human being, by stabbing Ethan Chapin, from which he died. This was signed on May 16, 2023, by the presiding grand juror. So now I'm going to go to the maximum penalties of each charge, starting with count 1, burglary, minimum 1 year, up to 10 years in imprisonment, fine of up to $50,000, or both fine and imprisonment, restitution for the victim's economic losses resulting from the crime. For counts 2, 3, 4, and 5, murder in the first degree, maximum penalties, life in prison, or the death penalty. Fine of up to $50,000, or both fine and life in prison or the death penalty. Restitution for the victim's economic losses resulting from the crime. Also, additional fine of up to $5,000 to be paid directly to the victim's families. If you are found guilty or plead guilty on each charge, and the maximum sentences are imposed consecutively, that means one right after the other, you could be facing 10 years in prison, followed by 4 consecutive life sentences or death penalties, fines of up to $200,000 and $20,000 to be paid directly to the families with any restitution resulting from the crimes. Okay. Mr. Kohberger, do you understand the charge in count 1, burglary?
Yes.
Do you understand the maximum penalty?
Yes.
Do you understand the charge in count 2, murder in the first degree?
Yes.
Do you understand the maximum penalty?
Yes.
Do you understand the charge in count 3, murder in the first degree?
Yes.
Do you understand the maximum penalty?
Yes.
Do you understand the charge in count 4, murder in the first degree?
Yes.
Do you understand the maximum penalty?
Yes.
Do you understand the charge in count 5, murder in the first degree? Do you understand the maximum penalty?
Yes.
Okay, Ms. Taylor, is Mr. Kohberger prepared to plead to these charges?
Your Honor, we will be standing silent.
Okay, because Mr. Kohberger is standing silent, I'm going to enter not guilty pleas on each charge, counts 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now, at this juncture, the state has 60 days to give notice of intention to seek the death penalty. And Mr. Kohberger has a constitutional and statutory right to a speedy trial. So let's start with you, Ms. Taylor, and then Mr. Thompson to discuss some schedule.
Your Honor, we'd ask the court to set this trial at the very outside of the speedy trial, right? We're not prepared to do anything but ask the court to do that today.
Okay. Have you counted out when that will be? November?
I have not counted it out, Your Honor, but I believe that we did out November 22nd as one is maybe November 20th, somewhere in there. So I'd ask the court to set it for an October trial date.
How long do you think it'll take to try the case?
My best guess is it would take at least 4 weeks, maybe 6.
So you'd like me to set this for a 6-week trial?
At this point, I would, Your Honor.
Okay, the judge set an October 2nd date for the trial. That was the arraignment there. We just caught all of it except for the last few seconds there, but we'll play it for you at the top of the hour, the rest of it. Brian Kohberger entered pleas of not guilty. He didn't. The judge did on his behalf. If you notice there, he chose to, quote, stand silent. We'll have the rest of it right after this.
Okay, pretty interesting. So they're anticipating trial to start Monday, October 2nd. And his attorney said 4 to 6 weeks. That brings us to the murder date, pretty much. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks. Monday, November the 13th. That's pretty eerie. So right to the day. I mean, if they went exactly 6 weeks, which no one can predict, just really interesting. I guess we're going to see this move along. I mean, just in watching the footage now of inside the courtroom, um, my personal opinion is that they seem to have a really clear trajectory on moving this case full steam ahead from the defense perspective, and running this straight to trial. So they don't seem to be messing around, and they seem to have a clear plan, just by the, silent plea and requesting that trial date. They just said that they just want to focus on getting that trial date. So let me know what you think in the comments. I think in the coming weeks, we're going to get a lot of heavy information regarding discovery on the case. But again, that depends on how sealed everything remains and the gag orders, etc. Um, the judge had a hard time with some of the names in this case, and in all fairness, some of them are a little bit difficult in terms of pronunciation. However, I heard that Kaylee's sister was upset, that her name was mispronounced, which I can appreciate to some degree. Kaylee's not a particularly difficult name. The Gonsalves part, that takes a little practice getting used to if you're not familiar with that name. I believe it has a Brazilian ancestry. Even Zana, he had trouble pronouncing. Again, not a tremendously common name. I think we're going to get a lot of people complaining about that. People tend to just like to complain, period. But definitely let me know what you think. I guess we're going to get the rest of what happened in the courtroom here in just a few minutes. I don't know if they're going to show us the gallery and the people inside the courtroom or not. I know there'll be camera footage, and I did see that they interviewed a couple people outside of the courtroom, so maybe we'll hear from them as to what it was like in terms of Brian. I mean, all these allegations. He gained weight, he lost weight, all these ridiculous filtered Photoshop pictures of him online. Just craziness. He looked pretty much the same. His hair got a little bit longer, which who cares? But he appeared healthy and in good, standing. He didn't have any drastic appearance changes from the last time that we saw him. But this case is really interesting. I'm like, we're all dying to see what's going to happen ahead. I just, can't wait for some of this clarification on the evidence. These alleged IDs in the glove. Were they female IDs? Weren't they? All these leaked reports. The knife. Was it bought on Amazon? Did it come all the way from Pennsylvania? All these things that we just don't have answers to yet. Hopefully we're going to get it. Here we go. Let's see.
October 2nd, when we went to break right before the beginning of the hour, we were just at that tail end of this arraignment hearing. So we want to show it all to you, right? Let's pick it up right where we left off. It's just the final few moments of this arraignment hearing.
Some of the other jury trials I have, but this is more critical and more important. So, Mr. Thompson, what's your...
Those trial dates are workable for the state judge.
Okay, thank you. October 2nd, starting February and March.
Yes, sir.
Okay, for 6 weeks.
Yes, sir.
Anything else we need to address today, Ms. Taylor?
Not with regard to the trial setting.
Anything else?
No.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Thompson?
Nothing to say at this time, Your Honor.
that, by the way, I do want to let everybody know, if they don't already know this, that once the grand jury issued the indictment, preliminary hearing scheduled to start on June 26th was no longer needed and was vacated. So some people are confused about that. So I thank counsel and the media and the public for your attention and respect. So we are adjourned. Thank you.
All right, Brian Kohberger exiting the courtroom following this morning's arraignment, where, if you missed it, he, through his attorney, decided not to enter a plea of not guilty. He opted to, quote, stand silent. And at that moment, the judge entered pleas of not guilty for him on his behalf. And they're moving forward now with an October 2nd trial date. We'll see if that sticks. Likely will not. Here to discuss it, trial attorney Lateef Gray in Oakland, California, and in Detroit, trial attorney Michael Jaffer. Welcome, both of you. Good afternoon. Michael, the October 2nd, let's start it there. Likely not going to happen, especially if the state comes in and says we are seeking the death penalty.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. October 2nd is only, 4 months away. This is a trial of grave magnitude. The nation is going to be very interested in it. 4, college students were killed and murdered, and he went to Pennsylvania. He was, arrested in his parents' house. It took them 6 months to extradite him from to Pennsylvania and get him to this point. So the trial is 4 months later, and it took them about 5 months to get him to this point. I would put the chances of a trial of happening on October 2nd at around 5%.
Lateef, according to our Chanley Painter, who was in the courtroom, Kohberger at one point when first walking in gave a quick glance into the gallery, but otherwise, as we watched, it was pretty much straightforward, not looking back. Family members were in the gallery, the Gonzalez family, Maddie Mogan's family there. Anything stand out to you in terms of his appearance, his, the fact that he elected to stand silent instead of entering the not guilty plea, which we expected?
Well, the fact that he didn't enter the not guilty plea, or his attorney didn't enter the not guilty plea, is a little bit different. Ordinarily, in these circumstances, when a client is entering a plea, whether it be guilty or not guilty, the attorney lets the court know in advance what the client will be doing. So the fact that his attorney didn't enter a not guilty plea on his behalf is a little bit different. The fact that he didn't look around and stayed straight ahead, that might be at the advice of counsel. I know usually when we come into court, we tell our clients, don't look around, look straight ahead, and let the court know that you're here for serious business.
The Parkland shooter, Nicholas Cruz, did the same thing. In Florida, it's called, instead of saying the defendant stands silent, in Florida, it's the defendant stands mute. And that's what Nicholas Cruz did, and the mentality behind that was that it serves as one of the mitigators, and that is remorse, because we know that Nicholas Cruz admitted to what he did and wanted to enter into a plea agreement with the state to avoid trial in return of dropping the death penalty. He would plead guilty. They turned that down. He ends up pleading guilty anyway, and they have the penalty phase where eventually he was not sent to death row. Do you think that maybe, Michael, that's the angle, that he is going to eventually plead guilty here, that might be behind why he chose to, quote, stand silent?
That could be. He clearly had a discussion with his attorney. This was an intentional act on their part, right? This is part of a larger plan and strategy that him and his counsel have put together. It could just be that his counsel told him the only way out of the death penalty is through this judge. It's not through a jury. It's through this judge. You're going to have to prove to this judge that you are remorseful, and this might be the beginnings of that play. We're going to find out soon, and for all we know, maybe that's why they put the trial date so soon, because maybe the court knows something we don't know. There is a gag order on this, so they might know something. They definitely know something we don't know, and that thing might just be that this kid is going to end up pleading out.
But do you think, Lateef, the state of Idaho agreed to a plea agreement, given the fact that they do have the death penalty on the books, and this, I can't imagine a crime worse. If prosecutors and family members want to pursue the death penalty, well, they likely won't want to enter into any sort of plea, correct?
Yeah, it just depends. I could see the state entering into a plea with this gentleman based on the fact that they don't want to put the families through a lengthy trial where they'd have to sit there every day. They may have to testify. They may have to hear evidence that is just gruesome. So I could see the state offering a plea in exchange for keeping the families from being further traumatized by having to listen and sit through a lengthy trial.
If that's where the family wants to go, Michael, some families do want that process. They want the maximum penalty allowed by law as a point where they feel as though they're fighting for their loved one.
Yeah, I mean, the victim's advocate definitely are probably involved in this process, right? If we're gearing up for a plea and the court knows that, and the attorneys have, because the attorneys take a sidebar with the judge, right? And they have open conversations with the judge. They don't admit to fault or anything, but they've telegraphed if they're going to plea. I would assume their attorneys have telegraphed this to the judge. The victim's advocate must be involved, and the families of these four kids, they're going to be heard by this judge, and he's going to care more about their opinion than the opinion of the defendant, if in fact he does plead guilty, and if in fact he did in fact do this. So the families are going to play a big part in sentencing. They definitely are.
The probable cause affidavit laid out the state's case in such a fashion that kind of really didn't need the prelim for the public disclosure of the strength of the case, Lateef, because it's there. I mean, they have him. They're tracking his vehicle. They're tracking his cell phone. And most importantly, the killer leaves behind a knife sheath. And guess what? This guy's DNA is on the snap of that knife sheath. It seems as though while he said through an attorney after his arrest that he looked forward to clearing his name, that enough time has gone by for a PhD student to connect the dots that, ruh-roh, I'm done. You agree, Lateef?
Well, I agree that there's a lot of evidence. Him saying he wants to clear his name, I mean, that's just, he has to say that at that point. I mean, he can't come in and say, I'm pleading guilty from the beginning of the case. So him saying he wants to clear his name and wants to fight the case, I expected him to do that. The fact that they've gone by way of a grand jury indictment lets me know that the prosecutor wants to get this case moving and wants to get some sort of progress made, either be a plea or taking it to trial.
Yeah, and that part of the equation there, too, was the fact that the defense wanted to, or they filed a motion for, they issued a subpoena for the fourth roommate, and they asked the court to require that individual to testify at the preliminary hearing. And it was shortly after that was litigated that the state went to the grand jury and they vacated the prelim because they didn't need it because a grand jury indicted him. So this is a three-part process, very bizarre sort of thing happening today. You have the arraignment, which it was done. Now there are two other things on the docket, if you will, but they've taken breaks in between them. So next up is the scheduling conference on the gag order. You remember the Gonzalez family is, through their attorneys, basically asking the court to separate the families from this gag order, and they want the ability to discuss the case, and they believe that that's very important. So they're going to deal with that. And then there's going to be a third third hearing, a motion hearing on a defense motion to compel. While there, you had this stay silent thing going on, Michael, everything else leads one to believe that Kohberger and his team are going to fight this, and just because of the movements that they've made from a legal standpoint, including today with this motion to compel for discovery. So I guess we shouldn't read too much into his standing silent thing and think, oh, I bet he's going to plead guilty. Every other indicator, right, is that they're going to fight this tooth and nail.
Yeah, let me opine on that. So we just witnessed a case last week on this channel where the attorneys did a phenomenal job defending the person all the way up until the end. And then that person, Zeiler, took the stand in his own defense. And then 20 minutes later, his attorney quit the case. He was ethically required to quit the case. He actually had to withdraw from representing his client after spending over a year getting him to that point, and did an awesome job, right? And so the reason I bring that up is because the attorneys in this case, like all attorneys in all cases, have an ethical duty. The defense attorneys have an ethical duty to do everything they possibly can to challenge all the evidence, challenge all the witnesses, turn every stone over. Otherwise, their license is on the line, right? So they might have an excellent client or a crazy client. We know nothing about this defendant, right? But no matter what type of defendant he is, his attorneys are required to do exactly what they're doing now, even if he tells them that he wants to plea. What if he tells them, I want to plea, and then he changes his mind 2 months later or a month later? They will lose their licenses if they miss deadlines or miss the opportunity to challenge evidence. They have to do everything they possibly can. And at the end of the day, if their client is found guilty, the first thing he's going to do in his appeal is he's going to claim ineffective assistance of counsel. And if they really did ineffectively assist him, they're not going to be attorneys very much longer. So when we see them taking these movements, I read it as this is what they're supposed to do, but we're going to see whether or not it works.
Yeah, they're doing their job and doing it to the best of their abilities. Let's get a break in here. We are expecting that second hearing to begin at any moment. Our Chanley Painter is in the courtroom. Our cameras are in the courtroom. We'll turn that one around. There's a look outside the Latah County Courthouse in Idaho. A live picture, much more of our continuing coverage of Brian Kohberger in court when we return. Tonight on Closing.
So they brought up some interesting pieces here. I mean, I don't know that he'd plea. I guess it will depend on how heavy the evidence is that we find out at discovery. The only reason I say that is because I know that his mother and his family are really highly against the death penalty. If you've watched some of my earlier videos, I've covered some of that. His mother strongly opposes the death penalty, and he may not want to put his family through something like that if the evidence becomes so overwhelming. I mean, this can go either way. It could be going that way, and he's waiting to see, and then he's leaving his option open to plea, or they all know stuff we don't, and on the surface, you know, this all points to guilt, but we don't know what they know, and we just don't know. So we're just gonna have to wait it out. I mean, there could be a real bombshells coming through that are factual. There's just been so much speculation to make the narrative fit. Oh, we saw blood on his pillow. Well, I mean, really, who cares about that? I'm sure if all the bedding in my house and all my family members' bedding went to forensics, they may find blood on pillows in my house. I have a child who has nosebleeds. I myself have had nosebleeds in the night. You know, Sometimes people shaving have cuts on their face. I mean, there's a million reasons. You could have had dental work and went to sleep and drooled and had blood in your pillowcase. I mean, any number of reasons that could occur. Um, you could have had a mosquito bite on your arm that you scratched to death and picked and slept, with your arm on the pillow, and or had a cut and opened a scab. I mean, it doesn't. It most likely points to his blood and no one else's. So a lot of people are jumping. Oh my God, he didn't take pillows from his house to the crime scene and bring them home and sleep on them and leave them in the room. I think we can pretty much agree on that. Um, I don't know what's going to come of it, but there will be real bombshells in the case. I think there's so many other things that we forget. I mean, that's a highly populated and concentrated area of college students right there at King Road. So many people live there. Is it possible that he had a friend in that area and that can explain away the pings? I mean, there's 1,000 variables of how this case can be spun. Um, there were other people who were interesting that people wanted to write off because they don't seem harmful, but we don't know that. I mean, there's some real parallels with one of the other people who were brought up in this case and were heavily scrutinized by the public. Is that still being looked into? Did they not look into it because they got that DNA on the sheaf and they think that, this is open and shut? Could they be wrong? I mean, anything could happen at this point. Um, the FBI was on the case pretty heavily. I'm sure there's still things out there in evidence that are coming back. But we're going to find out as this case progresses just how heavy some of this evidence is. I mean, they don't have to tell the public anything, but it would have been nice had they explained some things away. Like they could have at least told us if that footage from the gas station that was so blurry was in fact Brian Kohberger's car. They never gave us that information. It was a white car, but so many people have pointed out differences between the window shapes and the Elantra and the time and all these different things. We don't know absolutely that was the right white car. As we know from looking for that white car, how many cars there were. Okay, let's see. We're going back into this courtroom and this coverage. Let's see.
Each charge, counts 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Brian Kohberger, the suspected murderer, accused murderer, stood silent when asked to enter a plea. And you just heard the judge enter the plea of not guilty on his behalf after having his attorney get up and say that instead of entering a not guilty plea or a guilty plea, he decided to, quote, stand silent. He's charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of burglary in the November stabbings of those 4 University of Idaho students. The judge at the end of this morning's hearing set a trial date for October 2nd. Brian Kohberger, of course, is a former PhD student, now facing trial for murder. In the months since his arrest, Court TV has been getting a much clearer picture of who Brian Kohberger is. He's been described as a bullied loner who overcame addiction. Former students even said that at times he creeped them out. Here's a look at what we know about the criminology student, Mr. Brian Kohberger.
You read the affidavit and you just find out that nobody understands exactly why, but he was stalking them, he was hunting them.
The maximum penalty for that offense, if you plead guilty or are found guilty, is up to death and/or imprisonment for life. Do you understand?
Yes.
This was probably a person that blends into the background.
Yeah, I'm from Pennsylvania. We actually don't have like crosswalks.
His neighbors and people who know him superficially would probably never guess that he had any violent tendencies.
It's disgusting to think about someone that you used to hang out with all the time could do something like this.
Are you waiving your right to a speedy preliminary hearing?
Yes.
If you got to know him well, you would see layers of things that were a bit off or different.
What I do know is that Brian did have anger issues.
You could tell there was some off about him. Very quiet, calculated about what he says. Actually very similar to how he walked into court, no different.
I'm just curious about the law. I don't mean to...
Oh, no, yeah, I can find it for you. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Everything that I've read about Brian Kohberger would fit the type of person that we would expect for doing a crime like this.
All right, let's do this. Let's bring in trial attorney Lateef Gray. He's in Oakland, California, and in Detroit, trial attorney Michael Jafer. And we are getting a statement in from the Gonzalez family. They were in attendance. Our Chanley Painter says they were in the gallery there. They were there, not only mom and dad, but Kaylee Gonzalez's sister was also there along with her newborn, and we're all in the courtroom. Here's what the statement says. The family would like to thank everyone for continuing to follow this case and keep the memories of Kaylee, Maddie, Xana, and Ethan alive. They are what is important, not the defendant. We are thankful that the Latah County District Attorney's Office finally took the case to a grand jury and came back with an indictment. At the same time, we are disappointed that the judicial process has not been more efficient in addressing the gag order. This is just the beginning of a long journey for all the families, and we are thankful for your continued support and coverage of this. Lateef, what do you make out of that statement? They're challenging the gag order, believing that as victim family members, they should not be subjected to any sort of a gag order, and also that they should be given likely information from prosecutors about the case. The frustration from families in any criminal case is there usually. There's always something because they're unfamiliar with the rules of the road, et cetera, et cetera. But this is an extraordinary case and it's just a horrific outcome for these families. What's your take on this Gonzalez family statement and their battle against the court in terms of the gag order?
Well, it sounds like the family wants justice to be served, and they feel like it's taking a while to do that. As far as the gag order, I understand them not wanting to be subject to the gag order because they want to talk about what happened to their loved one. And ordinarily, I've seen cases where gag orders are issued, but it normally applies to the parties, either the prosecution or the defense, and not victims. So that's a bit different, but it sounds to me like the family wants justice served, and they want it served as quickly as possible. And they don't feel like, at this point, they've been getting that.
Okay, the scheduling, again, there's a three-pronged process here. We watched the arraignment. Now the scheduling conference has just begun. Our team is inside the courtrooms. Our cameras are there. We're going to show this to you as soon as it's done. And according to our notes, the Kohberger entered. The judge is there. There's a couple people on Zoom, and the judge is trying to troubleshoot some Zoom technical issues. Can't hear someone on the other side. It's the mute button, usually. And then this from our Chanley painter. When Kohberger walked in, he apparently made eye contact with Chanley. And then went back and sat there. The first time he came in, she said that he did have a quick glance into the gallery before then focusing his attention towards the front of the room and the judge. Michael Jaffer, he seemed very coherent, too, in that first hearing, the arraignment hearing, answering all of the judge's questions, et cetera. What's your take on what we know about this PhD student now turned accused murderer? Is this the kind of client you think is going to be very involved in a defense, or what's your thought? What's your take? And I get it, you've never met him, we don't know a lot, but just what's your gut tell you? Oh, speaking of mute buttons.
Oh, no, can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Sorry about
gotcha.
that. Yeah. So I've seen defendants like him my entire career. If in fact he did in fact do this, right? He is Ted Bundy-esque. I get this Ted Bundy feel from him. Obviously, he's innocent until proven guilty. We have no idea whether or not he did this or not. But if in fact he did do this, this is a Ted Bundy-esque type defendant. He's going to be very involved. He's going to be one of the most difficult clients to represent because if he did it, he would have some narcissistic personality where he would think he's the smartest guy in the room. The worst thing you could do is defend a person who thinks he's smarter than you and knows more than you. Having a client be involved is one thing. Having a client think that they know better than you and that your plan is not the right plan, that is a challenge for the attorney because the attorney is dealing with somebody who actually has some intellect, and it's going to be very difficult for that attorney to get that person to lead them down the right path. So it's going to be a challenge for that attorney to represent that person if in fact he did do it. If he didn't do it, he's going to be the best client in the world because he's coherent, he's smart, he's intelligent, and he's going to help you defend the case and win the case. That's my take.
Interesting. All right, let's get a break in here, and we have much more to discuss. That second leg of the three-pronged hearing, three separate hearings, is underway. Brian Kohberger back in the courtroom. Our cameras are there. We'll show it to you as soon as it's concluded. The rules are, after it's over, we get to watch it. So that's exactly what we'll do. Stick with us. Back with more.
So there you have it. You know, how involved will he be? Again, more speculation. We don't know. You know, yeah, we know he's intelligent. He's going for his PhD. Um, that's why it's hard for a lot of people to believe someone of such high intelligence would do something so stupid. But again, most criminals do things thinking that they're smarter and they won't get caught, which is getting more and more ridiculous as time evolves with technology. I guess we won't know until all the evidence comes out. This has just been a very interesting case. Uh, there's two sides of, there's a lot of people who really are, innocent until proven guilty, although the landscape makes him look extremely guilty at this point. Many of us have an open mind because there are usually rare instances, but there are enough instances where a wrong person is sought, uh, or they get one piece of the guilty party. One person, and there could be more. Um, they've adamantly stated that this murder was done by one person alone. So again, we're gonna have to wait and see. Um, I guess this gag order thing has become a point of contention for the Gonsalves family in particular. We haven't heard from the other families in regard to that. They have been the one that have been speaking to the media the most, um, and they do not want to be silenced. I guess they don't want their rights of free speech and voicing their feelings on this to be silenced, which I can appreciate. However, there's a bigger picture here, and that is to keep the integrity of this case intact, because there's nothing worse than having a guilty, cold blooded killer walk free because of a technicality. And that's a very real thing. I mean, that does happen. And when it does, it often leads to more tragedy. These offenders who were guilty get out on a technicality, and it's not before long that they do something else that's pretty horrific. Uh, so we definitely don't want that, and I hope that the families keep that in mind. Um, they don't want to jeopardize this case. They want to see justice more than any of us do, as passionate as we may be. Their family. This was their child, their sister, their loved one, their friend. Um, and it's difficult. Personally, as the case evolves and we find out more things, um, based on facts, not based on speculation, I really think that Maddie and or Xana were the target in this case. Um, we do know that Xana has a sister at Washington State. Makes you wonder, you know, did they somehow cross paths? And these two communities are very much intertwined, University of Idaho and Washington State. Um, I just hope we get those answers to look into the mind of, you know, what happened here. So tragic. I mean, four people. Kaylee wasn't supposed to be there this weekend. She was home, and she only went to show her friends her new car and hang out with her friends for the weekend. So she wasn't supposed to be there, and Ethan didn't live there. So it's kind of process of elimination at this point. Let's hear what they're talking about here on Court TV.
And I see the picture and I'm thinking, that looks a lot like my TA who's also named Brian, but that would be crazy. It was just like totally jarring, totally shocking.
Nobody understands exactly why, but He was stalking them. He was hunting them. He was just a person looking for an opportunity, and it just happened to be in that house.
Welcome back to Court TV Live on our continuing coverage of Bryan Kohberger in court. Our cameras are there as well in Moscow, Idaho this afternoon. There is a scheduling conference and a motion hearing going on right now. Kohberger is back into the courtroom. Earlier today, the judge entered not guilty pleas on behalf of Bryan Kohberger after he decided to stand silent instead of entering the pleas himself. Those pleas, of course, entered are for the first-degree murder deaths of Kaylee Gonzalez, Madison Mogen, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapman. We're not allowed to broadcast the conference live, but our cameras are there recording it. As soon as it's over, then we'll be able to watch it all, and we're expecting it to not to take too long, a few minutes. I'm getting some notes from inside there, and the judge has decided to bring those second legs, the second and third legs of today's three hearing event, if you will, into one. So they're going to deal with both of the motion to vacate the gag order and a motion to intervene on behalf of the family of Kaylee Gonzalez, and then they're also deal with the defense motion to compel for discovery. The judge also has asked, according to our notes here from inside the courtroom, he has asked the parties to brief them on whether or not there should be cameras in the courtroom in such a high-profile case like this one. And they're going to do that by the week of the 26th, it looks like. And that everybody seems to agree on that, according to our notes. The other big one coming from the courtroom, from our Chanley painter, when Bryan Kohberger walked in, he apparently made eye contact with Chanley. So as soon as this is over, we will be talking to Chanley to see what that was like. Can only imagine. The courtroom is packed. The families are there inside the courtroom. The Gonzalez family is there. Madison Mogen's family is there. Other family members were able to join via Zoom and watch the proceedings. But there was a large group of family members there, and beforehand, the Gonzalez family, articulated what they were hoping to see in the courtroom, and they basically were saying that they plan to stare into the the back of his head during this hearing. They're planning to be there the whole time. This is Christy Gonzalez speaking to CBS, saying that he's going to feel all of us just staring at the back of his head because he won't turn around. And then Kaylee's dad, Steve, told News Nation that the families are, quote, all starting to get their power and their strength and ready to go to court. I think that courtroom is going to get more and more crowded. The more uncomfortable we can make this room, the more that we can represent each person that was robbed of their lives. We're the only voices that they have. Michael Jaffer and Lateef Gray have been watching along with us. Michael, the Gonzalez family is clearly one of those families that are ready to go to battle, if you will. You know, there's different people have different reactions. Steve especially is very keen on making his presence felt, and that strategy of trying to fill the courtroom and make Kohberger feel uncomfortable. Is that something you've encountered before? I mean, there are different reactions, right? Because this is a horrible process that all of these individuals for all four of these families are going through.
This is going to have a dramatic impact on the jury, right? So this isn't really just for the cameras or for the media or anything like that. There's going to be a jury that's going to have to decide this case if, in fact, this case goes to trial, right? And so their presence in the courtroom is going to be palpable. It's going to be known. It's going to be felt by the jury. It's actually going to have a negative effect for the defendant. I'm not saying he deserves more. He might not. But their presence is going to make the jury feel very uncomfortable, and it's going to make the jury feel like it's going to be an impact against the defendant, right? At the end of the day, this is the unfortunate thing about our system. This is the beautiful thing about our system, which is that you see this gag order. People want to talk about this case. People want to try this case before it's actually tried. And so I could see the judge's wisdom behind putting this gag order. It's uncomfortable for us because we want to talk about the case. We want to know a little bit more about the case. But this is exactly why, because he saw that the family members are going to go out there without a gag order. They are going to basically let everybody in the country know that this person murdered their beautiful, sweet kids. And the case is going to be over before it actually progresses. So it's unfortunate. You see the pictures of these, these beautiful kids. They were robbed of their lives. If in fact this defendant did it, he deserves the worst. But what the judge is trying to do is try to say, listen, there's a process, there's a system, we have to go through it. I understand everybody wants red meat, but we've got to go through this system. And so I need everybody to just calm down. If they're in this courtroom and they make an actual dramatic impact and they yell, they scream, they're going to be out of that courtroom. So we're going to see what happens.
The judge has said I'm getting some notes from the courtroom here, the 27th of June at 10 a.m. to talk about cameras and then also the gag order. But then Shannon Gray apparently stood up and basically said that he wants this motion to amend and clarify. It's different, and he wants a hearing much sooner. He would like it by the end of this week. The judge responds, can you do June 9th? Better to do it all at the same time. Could be ready by June 9th. So Shannon Gray, who represents the Gonzalez family in the courtroom this morning, representing them in the well there, and he's pushing this forward, and sort of to that theme, Lateef, of this is one of those families that is not going to just sit back and be told to just let the process go. They're pushing the envelope, which is their right, and we're seeing it play out here in the courtroom right now.
Yeah, they're a very aggressive family, and by aggressive, I mean they want to get their point across, which is that their loved one was taken from them, and they want everybody to know about it. And especially they want the defendant to know about it. So I understand their perspective. I understand where they're coming from. If this happened to me, I'd want the world to know about it. So I definitely understand where they're coming from.
Yeah. Michael, the bottom line here, this October 2nd trial date, it seems that there's just no way that that's going to go. There's a 60-day window for the state to decide whether or not to go for the death penalty. If, which we expect they will, they declare that they'll pursue the death penalty, it changes the game, does it not? Just inherently, because of the magnitude of a capital case opposed to a regular murder case, if you will.
Anytime the state takes someone's life consciously, it's a big deal. Right, we're one of the few civilized countries that have the death penalty, and we've had it for a long time. Some states don't have it, obviously. Whenever a state decides to take someone's life, it takes the entire specter of the case and the duties and the responsibilities and the timelines. It takes it and blows it out of proportion. People hear about many, many years that go by after a person's found guilty and after the death penalty is given. So we're not going to see an October 2nd trial date if the state goes for the death penalty. And I don't see how they can avoid going for the death penalty. You have the death of 4 beautiful young college kids, innocent kids. If this person did in fact do it, I can't see, if this is not a death penalty case, what is? He's a PhD student. He knows better. He's not chewing his forearm in front of the cameras, right? So he's clearly a person who was in control of himself, and he killed. If in fact he did it, he would be found guilty of killing 4 young people at the beginning of their lives, right? They have to go for the death penalty, and so when they do that, they're not going to have an October 2nd trial date. It's just not possible.
Oh boy, I'm just getting more notes out of the courtroom. Shannon Gray is going at it here with this judge. The judge now set, instead of the 27th, the June 9th, because Shannon Gray wanted this clarification and adjustment to the order. And his response to the June 9th was, to the judge, this is your gag order. If the court does not want to make modifications in my motions might end up getting moved. The Supreme Court gave guidance, which gave great weight to my motion. It goes on and on, but obviously he is fighting this tooth and nail in front of the judge and in front of Brian Kohberger, who is in court. We're going to get a break in here. When we come back, we're expecting to get the feed from this hearing as it concludes. And we're going to talk to our Chanley Painter, who is inside this courtroom. She says she locked eyes with this man, Brian Kohberger, as he walked into the courtroom. We'll get all the color from Chanley, etc., as our coverage of Brian Kohberger in court continues right here on Court TV, your front row seat to justice.
So they're kind of focused on this whole eye contact situation. I mean, to me, it doesn't really move me too much. I mean, he walked into the courtroom. Of course, he's going to look around, and I think that's just their way of sensationalizing the experience. He's not going to walk in with his head down and his eyes closed. If he did that, they'd have something to say. I guess this family is really, pressing the issue of being held under this gag order. They want this resolved like now. I don't know what's so urgent. I mean, I get it that they don't want to be under someone's thumb, but June 9th is just, basically 2 weeks away. I don't know what they want to achieve by having it lifted so soon. So many bigger issues here, but again, that's a preference. That's their right, and I respect them for fighting it for sure. It's unusual, so and nobody likes to be told what they can and can't say, so I can appreciate that. I guess they're just desperately trying to preserve as much information as we've had. So many leaks, so many things being said. Everything that the family says is put under a microscope, twisted, convoluted, edited, flipped upside down, and just dissected word by word. So I believe that the court is trying to avoid as much of that as they can. They're certainly not going to stop it. I anticipate that throughout this case. So we're going to see. Pretty much what's coming up is just that. And we're going to hear from Chanley and her experience locking eyes with Brian Kohberger. And, maybe some more information of the family. But we're going to get more information on that gag order. That's pretty much what's coming up ahead. And from what they stated, Brian Kohberger remained in the courtroom for those motions and that hearing. So when we get that footage, it'll be interesting to see his reaction to that. He's been pretty much stoic. I see him clench his jaw a few times. He appeared to be a little bit nervous, but he seemed, appropriate for what's happening. He's focused on the court proceeding at hand. He's not emotional. He's not fidgety. He's just focused on the proceeding. So we have a lot of commercials, and I guess we'll get to that courtroom footage as soon as they can release it. They have to wait until that hearing is done based on the docket of, court order stating their instructions of how the footage can be used. And that was the agreement that they reached. June 27th, we're going to hear more on that. If they're going to allow cameras in the courtroom or how they're going to proceed. All right, Court TV's back with us.
Brian C. Kohberger, on or about November 13th of 2022 in Latah County, State
obviously an emotional time for the family, seeing the defendant for the first time.
It's usually pretty quiet. You know, we usually don't have anything like this going on in this Poconos. It's just surprising that, you know, we shop, we go to the stores here, and this person was among us.
Welcome back. The man accused of killing 4 University of Idaho students last November is back in court today. Brian Kohberger, accused of fatally stabbing Kaylee Gonzalez, Madison Mogan, Zayna Kernodle, and Ethan Shateman in their off-campus home while they slept. Right now, a scheduling conference and motion hearing is underway. We're bringing you details out of that, and as soon as it's over, we'll be able to play it back to you. That's the rules of the road here for us. Our cameras are in the courtroom. There's one outside the courtroom there. You look at live look at the Latah County Courthouse, where inside family members have gathered. Brian Kohberger is in the courtroom, and as is our Chanley Payne. She's been updating us with what's going on, and they're setting a date. It's now set at June 9th for the next hearing, and they're dealing mainly with this gag order at this point in the proceedings. Then the judge wants to deal with it all on June 9th. So that's where it's looking, and it's set at 1:30 p.m. There's also another motion that the judge is going to deal with, and that is a motion to compel, basically a discovery motion from the defense. Lateef Gray is here with us. He's in Oakland, California. He's a Bay Area attorney, and in Detroit, trial attorney Michael Jaffer is with us. They call him Big Case Mike because he's always on the big ones. Mike, when you look at the evidence stacked up that we know of from the probable cause affidavit in this case, what stands out to you? All right, I'm going to take away the DNA caught on the knife sheath, because that seems to be, if it's legit and the defense is unable to hammer in some doubt on that one with an expert, because if that's legit, if his DNA is on this knife sheath left at the crime scene, on the snap, the button there, I think it's game over. But other than that, what is it? The Hyundai Elantra, what is it that stands out to you as the most compelling in terms of from a jury's perspective?
It's the cell phone data, right? So, you know, we grew up in a world where you could not present cell phone data and data from a watch to place somebody at the scene of a crime. Now, this has become a thing in the past decade, right? So people have these smartwatches. Everybody has a cell phone, right? I remember back in the days when I was in college, nobody had a cell phone, right? We used to have beepers, and you could not place someone with a beeper, but now you could place someone with a cell phone. The most compelling evidence to me is the cell phone data, right? And showing where the person was, and the Hyundai Elantra and all of that. That in conjunction with the knife, as a pundit, I'm here in my capacity as a pundit on this case, right? Not as an attorney. And so as a pundit, I would look at this and say, he's cooked, right? I don't see how you can avoid. He had the motive. He was a loner. He was friends with these people. He knew these people. He has his DNA evidence on the knife. They were stabbed to death. That's the most compelling evidence. So as a pundit, I think he's cooked, right? I don't see how they can cast doubt. Now, what they could do and what the attorneys can do if they fight this case is say, look, he was there. You know, he was definitely at the scene of the crime. His DNA evidence was on that knife, but there was somebody else who did it. Or they might even claim, I don't know how you could, allege self-defense in this case, but they would have to say that there was somebody else there, somebody else stabbed them, somebody else did this, he was just coincidentally there. That's the only way you can do it. If you're dealing with one murder, that's one thing. You're dealing with 4 murders, right? So it's going to be almost impossible. Maybe this is one of the cases that pleads out. A lot of these cases do plead out, right? Not a lot of these cases go to trial. This might be one of them. You see the pictures of these beautiful kids. It's insane. It's just disgusting. So I just don't see how his attorney. Would be the most difficult assignment if I was put on this case as a public defender. This would be the most difficult assignment I could possibly have. I can't see a more difficult case to defend than this.
Lateef, what do you do when you have a case that is difficult to defend because of the facts, because of maybe the defendant? How do you handle that? It's your job.
You give it your best effort. I mean, and it seems like his attorneys are doing that. The motion to compel, in which they're asking for all the discovery, that's a good start. But when you have tough cases like this, you just have to fight them. You go into them realizing that this is a tough fight. The odds are stacked up against you, but you do everything you would do in all the other cases that you think you could actually win. So it's a tough case. His attorneys seem like they're putting forth the effort, but when you have cases like this, you just do all the legwork you can. You interview witnesses, you do whatever you can, and you leave no stone unturned so that if your client is convicted, you can look back and say, I did everything I could do to represent him properly.
Michael, the families, the indication we get from the Gonzalez family is that they do want the state to pursue the death penalty. We both know that is a different ballgame. And what I don't think a lot of families do know is that it's excruciating. If your loved one is murdered and the individual is sentenced to death, you have a life. You have decades of hearings and attorneys that are there, that have dedicated their lives because they're against the death penalty to try to get their clients off the death row. And I witnessed an execution at San Quentin at one point, and I had interviewed the family members, and it was 18 years afterwards, and they said if they would have known what they were in for, they would have wished that the death penalty wasn't on the table, because every few years there were new crops of attorneys coming in to say how great this guy was. They relitigated the case over and over again. How important is it for prosecutors to give, and it's nearly impossible to really let them know, but give them a sense of the road ahead in a death case, because you talked about it before. It's a different ballgame. The rules are changed, and the appeals are there. They're paid for by taxpayers, and the victim family members have to relive it for decades.
So the family members at this point, I don't see how they can be dissuaded from the death penalty because they don't have this experience, right? The prosecutors are going to explain everything that you just said. You gave a beautiful dissertation of how this process works, and you've witnessed one. I've never witnessed one. I've seen it on TV, right? So the prosecutors are going to tread carefully in explaining this to the family, but I don't see how the family can be dissuaded because you have four, right? You have four families, right? And so at the end of the day, the families, in their mind, they want to make this man uncomfortable. They want to put him through this, and they want to sit in a chair. They want to be invited one day in the morning, 10 years from now, 15 years from now. They want to sit in a chair, and they want to have this young man at this point, in 15 years, he'll only be 43 years old. They want to see him brought into the room and put to death, and they want to look at him while he dies, right? This is a very visceral, in-your-face type of situation. This is the worst of us, the worst of our society, worst of our culture, worst of our people as human beings, right? To stab, so he didn't shoot them, he didn't poison them, he stabbed them. He got close up and he stabbed these people. And so the family wants him to put to death, but you're right, the prosecutors are gonna have to try to explain it to them. At the end of the day, it's not their decision, but prosecutors always defer to the family on this.
They sure do. Lateef Gray, Michael Jaffer, thank you so much for helping us out here as we continue our coverage of Bryan Kohberger in court. We're going to get a break in here, but Matt Johnson is going to pick up our coverage at the top of the hour. Matt, good afternoon to you. What a day there in Latah County, Idaho.
Such a big day, and great coverage to you, and also our Chanley Painter, who's in the courtroom. We're hearing that we're going to have a live update from her. She locked eyes with the accused killer, Bryan Kohberger, in court. What she has to say about that coming up. Keep it right here on Court TV.
I found something huge.
Check this out.
All day? All day. Yeah.
Now for the unexplainable. Every second counts.
Put the gun down!
Welcome aboard.
It's always exciting.
A little enthusiasm here. They say Le Bon Temps Roulette. Let the good times roll.
Okay, people, let's start with the Who.
Justice has been served!
Very impressive.
There's gonna be trouble. Let's have it. Keep your eyes open. Pull that trigger.
That's right.
I'll find you, and I'll kill you.
Now all I need is a fresh horse, a saddle, and a gun.
Do you have an idea for a story you would like to see or a comment on our coverage you want to share? We want to hear from you. Call our Scripps News viewer hotline at 833-4SCRIPPS. That's 833-4SCRIPPS. There's a better way to begin your mornings.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Morning Rush. Thanks so much for being with us.
Context and conversation.
There's a new study that might make you feel a little bit better. Okay. So listen to this.
On the stories that will shape each day.
Here with us now is meteorologist Scott Withers. You got just wave after wave after wave.
So you can get on with yours.
Make sure you stay with us as we monitor this developing story.
Morning Rush. Weekday mornings starting at 7/6 Central. Only on Scripps News.
Free Movie Channel has something for everyone. With no subscription or rental fees, Free Movie Channel is the quick and easy choice for first-run films, as well as classic movies. Check out Free Movie Channel today and find your new favorite movie.
Sunday nights on In Real Life.
For the baby?
Yeah.
Scripps News journalists take you off the grid.
We were just a bunch of kids with a camera.
Stunts have become more specialized.
And to the heart of the story.
When the pandemic hit, the American dream kind of changed.
There were a lot of warning signs. They just didn't care.
In Real Life, Sunday at 8/7 Central, only on Scripps News. Every day on Court TV.
Get ready, folks. We've got a lot to get to.
Witness the raw emotion.
She didn't need to die that night.
I just snapped.
The outbursts.
This is ridiculous.
Don't get brazen with me.
The life or death drama.
I just killed a man.
Live inside the courtroom.
I could have said that I was guilty a long time ago.
Every trial, every verdict, every single day. Court TV, your front row seat to justice.
Dreaming of changing the world is one thing. Building the community to actually do it, that's real. Sometimes we need to come together to elevate higher. Introducing Bounce Community, a new bond between Bounce and you. Together we celebrate, engage, and empower. Together through partnership outreach, each month we'll spotlight people making impactful change, giving back, spreading love, elevating the community. Bounce Community. To get started, go to bouncetv.com/community.
And happy Monday to you. Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Matt Johnson. In today for Judge Ashley Wilcott this afternoon. Now, a trial date has been set for Brian Kohberger, the suspect accused in the brutal killings of 4 University of Idaho students. Kohberger appeared in an Idaho court hours ago and was arraigned just days after he was indicted by a secret grand jury on 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of burglary in the November stabbings.
You have a constitutional right to have an attorney represent you throughout these proceedings. If you cannot afford to hire a lawyer, then one is appointed at public expense. Ms. Taylor and her team have already been appointed, so that's taken care of. You have a right to a speedy and public jury trial where the state would be required to prove every element of each charge against you beyond a reasonable doubt. At that trial, you would have the right to cross-examine the witnesses called against you. That means to see, hear, and question them, to call witnesses to testify for you, and if you choose to testify in your own defense. But you're not required to testify because you also have a right of silence. That right is protected under the Idaho and federal constitutions, so you can remain silent throughout these court proceedings, and that can't be held against you in any way. What you do need to remember, though, is that anything you do say, other than to your lawyers, could be used against you in a later court proceeding. You understand that?
Yes, I do.
Okay, thank you. They also have a right to appeal any final decision of the court. But in order to exercise that right, you need to file a notice of appeal within 42 days of that final decision, or that right is waived. Also, if you are not a United States citizen, any finding of guilt in this state could have adverse consequences to your legal status. Do you understand these rights?
Yes.
Any questions about the rights?
No.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Kohberger. So let's go to the indictment. Do you have a copy of the indictment in front of you?
Yes.
Okay, Ms. Taylor, is Mr. Kohberger prepared to plead to these charges?
Your Honor, we will be standing aside.
A judge entered not guilty pleas on Kohberger's behalf. The pleas potentially set the stage for a trial in which he could face the death penalty as early as this fall. Prosecutors have 60 days to announce whether they will seek the death penalty in the case of the deaths of Madison Mogen, Kaylee Gonzalez, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapman. The scheduling conference and motions hearing just wrapped up. Our Chanley Painter was there. She's going to join us momentarily, but make no mistake. Today we're talking about Kohberger, but it's about those 4 victims. Let's welcome our guests for this hour. Joining me right now is trial attorney Lateef Gray in Oakland, California, and in Chicago, Illinois, trial attorney Michael Jaffer. Thank you for staying with us for this hour, this special coverage of the Kohberger hearings. First off, let me get your response, Michael, to what we've seen so far today, that the fact that he didn't address the judge, he had his attorney do it on his behalf and pleading not guilty. Have you seen that before? Is that uncommon? Is that common?
It's uncommon, but I've seen it before. It happens. Sometimes some people stand mute. Sometimes some people have their the court put in the plea for them. It's uncommon, but it happens. There's a number of reasons why that would happen. One of the reasons might be just for him to be a little bit more contrite, and they may be gearing up for a plea. This is just my educated guess. They may be gearing up for a plea. They may not be gearing up for a plea. But at the end of the day, it's more of a non-issue in my opinion. The big issue is obviously what he's being charged with. He did in fact put in a non-guilty plea, even though the court put it in for him. He's taking a position. We're going to see where that goes. It might go several ways, but one of the guesses is he may be gearing up for a plea. But he's clearly coherent. So clearly, the thing that makes this odd is he's a coherent person, so he knew how to say the words not guilty. The fact that he chose not to do it, it was intentional, but my guess is it might be because he might be gearing up for a plea.
But Lateef, we're also facing someone or dealing with someone that is a criminology PhD student. Are we already seeing how different this is going to play out?
No, I don't think so. I mean, here in California, it's customary for the attorney to enter the plea on his or her client's behalf. So I don't see any sort of gamesmanship from that perspective. So I would say no, that we shouldn't look too much into that. The fact that he pled not guilty, I expected that. Even in cases where the evidence may seem overwhelming, we ordinarily don't come in and plead guilty at arraignment.
And the follow-up question with that, what should we expect next in all of this? I mean, the defense attorney said that they wanted a trial date set for the very outset of a speedy trial. Is this going to get punted, especially if Lateef, they do seek the death penalty, prosecutors?
I don't see this going to trial by October, especially if the death penalty is instituted. Because I think he may be entitled to another attorney if the death penalty is instituted. So if they do that, it's going to start a whole process where he possibly gets another attorney, and it's going to take a while before that attorney gets up to speed. So no, I don't see this going to trial by October 2nd.
All right, and in case you're just joining us right now, there is just so many different facets of this case and such a broad timeline. Investigators have said that evidence tied Kohberger to the killings, in which included surveillance video and cell phone data. Legal correspondent Chanley Painter lays out the timeline on the morning of the murders.
The probable cause affidavit in the case against the accused killer of 4 University of Idaho students pieces together the movements of the suspect vehicle and coordinating cell phone location data beginning in the early morning hours of November 13th. At 2:42 a.m., the affidavit alleges that Brian Kohberger's phone places him likely at his apartment on the WSU campus where he was a PhD student studying and teaching criminology. At 2:44 a.m., Kohberger's vehicle and cell phone are on the move. Police say his white Hyundai Elantra is spotted on WSU surveillance cameras traveling north on Nevada Street at Stadium Way. According to the affidavit, it was here in this area of the WSU campus where surveillance video and Kohberger's cell phone placed him here around 2:47 a.m. According to the affidavit, he spent several minutes in this area where he allegedly turned off his cell phone before heading out of town toward Moscow, Idaho. By 2:53 a.m., Kohberger's white Hyundai Elantra is observed heading in the direction of Moscow, Idaho. At 3:26 a.m., the affidavit then places Kohberger's vehicle, now in the town of Moscow, in this residential neighborhood on Indian Hills Drive. This happens to be a road directly overlooking the Moscow Police Department. The Elantra is picked up on surveillance video moving west past the 700 block of Indian Hills. At 3:28 a.m., video shows the vehicle on Steiner Avenue at Highway 95 as it made its way towards the King Road neighborhood where the victims lived. Then, from 3:29 a.m. to 4:20 a.m., the suspect vehicle, the white Hyundai Elantra, is observed multiple times on video passing by 1122 King Road during the alleged time of the murders before being seen on video speeding away on Walenta Drive. The probable cause affidavit states that the car likely exited the neighborhood at Palouse River Drive and Conestoga Drive, a road that eventually leads to Pullman, Washington. About 2 hours after he allegedly turned off his cell phone, police say Kohberger turned it back on here near Blaine, Idaho. It's about 10 to 15 minutes south of Moscow, a rural community off Highway 95, and it has its own cell tower. According to the affidavit, from 4:50 a.m. to 5:26 a.m., Kohberger's phone movements show him allegedly moving south towards Genesee, Idaho, and west towards Uniontown, Washington. Kohberger may have taken a well-known back road called Thorn Creek Road at this point in his route towards his apartment. These are all very isolated roads, but Thorn Creek Road is known to be even more desolate. Police allege Kohberger eventually made his drive back into Pullman, Washington from the quiet road of Johnson, where his vehicle was picked up on this security camera, the first time a camera captured his Hyundai after the murders were committed. By 5:30 a.m., police tracked the movements of Kohberger's cell phone and vehicle back to his apartment.
And today, Brian Kohberger has pled not guilty through his attorney. Such a big day in the Idaho College murders case. Scheduling hearing also just wrapped up, and there is more to talk about. We'll show you Kohberger in court coming up. You're watching Court TV, your front row seat to justice.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, the latest out of today's hearing in the Idaho College student murders. Last week, a grand jury indicted the suspect in the killing of 4 University of Idaho students, a case that shook a small town and captured the nation's attention.
A quadruple homicide in Moscow, Idaho, it's just unheard of.
We'll show you the biggest moments as we preview what's next. Court TV teams are live from Idaho with the key takeaways.
Closing Arguments, tonight at 8/7 Central, only on Court TV.
All we do is true crime.
From victim...
It was here at this off-campus home where all 4 students were brutally stabbed.
All the way to verdict.
Guilty.
Some of the most important and compelling cases across the country.
Watching things unfold.
From beginning to end.
This is a missing persons case that feels so different.
Whenever we gear up for our next big trial, you know there's going to be something you haven't seen before.
So it looks like that gag order is going to be heard on this.
Free Movie Channel has something for everyone. Whether you're looking for a laugh, some tears, chilling scares, or something for the whole family, Free Movie Channel has got you covered. With no subscription or rental fees, Free Movie Channel is the quick and easy choice for first-run films, as well as classic movies that you can watch wherever you want, whenever you need a break. It's always free and it's always fun. Check out Free Movie Channel today and find your new favorite movie.
There's a better way to begin your mornings.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Morning Rush. Thanks so much for being with us.
Context and conversation.
There's a new study that might make you feel a little bit better. Okay. So listen to this.
On the stories that will shape each day.
Here with us now is meteorologist Scott Withers. You got just wave after wave after wave.
So you can get on with yours.
Make sure you stay with us as we monitor this developing story.
Morning Rush. Weekday mornings starting at 7, 6 Central. Only on Scripps News.
I found something huge.
Check this out.
All day?
All day.
Yeah.
Now for the unexplainable. Every second counts.
Put the gun down!
Welcome aboard.
It's always exciting.
A little enthusiasm here.
Laissez le bon temps rouler. Let the good times roll.
Okay, people, let's start with the who.
Justice has been served.
Very impressive.
What y'all watching? Whatever you like. Hello, somebody. Okay.
That's the only channel comes in clear around here.
That show is still on?
They're on season 49.
Shocking, yet exhilarating.
Look at God. Won't he do it? Yes, it will.
Dreaming of changing the world is one thing. Building the community to actually do it, that's real. Sometimes we need to come together to elevate higher. Introducing Bounce Community, a new bond between Bounce and you. Together we celebrate, engage, and empower. Together through partnership outreach, each month we'll spotlight people making impactful change, giving back, spreading love, elevating the community. Bounce Community. To get started, go to bouncetv.com/community.
Do you have an idea for a story you would like to see or a comment on our coverage you want to share? We want to hear from you. Call our Scripps News viewer hotline at 833-4SCRIPPS. That's 833-4SCRIPPS.
Wheels up in 30.
Let's go, let's go. Let's dig deep, figure out who we're dealing with.
We're ready to get the profile. He's growing bolder and more careless. There's no doubt he'll strike again.
I want this guy.
There's nothing the FBI does better than a manhunt.
Oh, wait, there he is.
Drive, go!
You said you were good at your job because you think through every outcome. Well, guess what? So do I.
Bring him in.
FBI, nobody move.
We got him.
Criminal Minds and FBI. Mondays on ION.
Brian C. Kohberger, on or about November 13th of 2022 in Latah County, state of Idaho, did unlawfully enter a residence with the intent to commit the felony crime of murder. The maximum penalty for this offense is death or imprisonment for life.
It's obviously an emotional time for the family seeing the defendant for the first time.
It's usually pretty quiet. You know, we usually don't have anything like this going on in this Poconos. It's just surprising that, you know, we shop, we go to the stores here, and this person was among us.
So, criminology PhD student Brian Kohberger back in court today in Idaho, facing 4 murder counts and 1 burglary charge. Through his attorney, he decided to stand silent. And through her, his public defender, he pled no guilty on all counts. Now, a trial date set for fall, possibly as early as October. And prosecutors, the time is now ticking. They have up to 60 days to declare if they're going to seek the death penalty in Idaho. And we know by recent reporting that now in Idaho, death penalty could include firing squad. It has been a big day. We now have one of the very latest hearings of the day. There are 3 today, folks. There was the pleading hearing, and then there was scheduling. Let's get you back into court and show it to you.
Thank you very much. Please be seated. Okay, we are back. Almost. Thank you. We are back on the record. State of Idaho versus Brian C. Kohberger, CR 2922-2805. A little echo there. Mr. Kohberger is still back in the courtroom. Ms. Taylor is representing him, also with Mr. Logston, excuse me. And I have Mr. Thompson, Latah County Prosecuting Attorney, representing the state, and with him is Brad Rudley, also the Latah County Prosecutor's Office. So, I'm sorry? Yes, and Mr. Gray. Okay, thank you, Mr. Gray. I was going to get to that because I was going to go in a list with the media, Associated Press et al. Is Liz Olson here? Or is she on Zoom? No, maybe not. Is there a lawyer representing Associated Press et al.?
Judge, there's a gentleman trying to talk to you, but he's muted.
Oh, Mr. Carone, you are muted. Well, now I can't hear you. Maybe it's my problem. Barely. Yeah.
I believe the screen is muted.
Okay. Now let's open it up. Okay. Say something, Mr. Carone. Still, I don't know. Different. Yeah. Technology's great until it's not. Yeah, that's all right. Okay. Are your speakers all the way out, Mr. Carone? Tap it? Or hit it? Whichever you prefer. Just kidding.
Connected to the thing you touch it. So that's
Do we have tech people who take care of this? Just working on it?
Might have him call in. We're putting on speaker.
That might be what we need to do. Thank you, Mr. Gray. Yeah, we're having trouble, Mr. Carone. I don't know if somebody is trying to fix that. Ms. Massa, excuse me, can I hear you now? Say something. Oh yeah, what I can do is I can, should I just move mine up? And that will pick it up. But then we'll have a big echo. Obviously, I am not very skilled at such things. Okay. Really sorry for all the delays. There were other things going on before I came into the court, and now we have this. So thank you for your patience. Okay, while we're waiting for that, I'm going to recognize Mr. Gray, who's representing the Gonsalves family. My plan was to go through the variety of motions that each representative has, starting with the Associated Press, then going to the Gonsalves family, and then to the party's counsel and we'll see where we go. But we're not going to have an 11 o'clock because we're just going to take care of all the scheduling issues now in this hearing.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Yeah, let's go off the record until we can fix this. Thank you. Okay. Can you say something, Mr. Perone? We're off the record. Don't worry.
Mr. Carone.
Fine with me.
Okay. So go ahead and be done.
So I'm going to unmute myself.
I'm going to unmute you.
Okay. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, Your Honor.
And I can hear you, Mr. Perone. We got echo now. This is more than my outside voice. Okay, is that better? Oh, brilliant. Thank you, Mary Lynn. Okay, thank you, Jennifer. Let's get back on the record then. Back on the record, State versus Brian Kohberger, CR 29222805. I was explaining how the order and the scheduling conference might go, at least my plan. And so I'm going to start with you, Mr. Carone. Your clients have the motion to vacate the amended non-dissemination order filed May 1. Also the motion to intervene filed May 1, same date. And now this case is in my hands, so I need to set a hearing, and I'm wondering how far out. I'd like to get some briefs, and this is a message to everybody before the hearing, including I want to hear arguments about whether or not there should be cameras in the courtroom in a high-profile case like this one. So, Mr. Carone, what looks good for you? And let me throw out, knowing that a lot of you were prepared to be here the week of June 26, that might make sense. But I'll hear from you, Mr. Carone.
Yes, Your Honor. So with our motion to vacate, motion to intervene, we've briefed the merits issues there. I think as the court's aware, we also briefed those issues before the Idaho Supreme Court, so I would think we could be ready to move pretty quickly. We have not briefed the issue about video cameras in the courtroom, so if that's something that you'd like the media coalition to weigh in on as well, we would need to submit a separate brief on that, but we can do that in the week of the 26th. The 26th itself, I'm not available, but the rest of the week would work.
Excellent. And I'll tell you, the reason that I'm bringing up cameras in the courtroom is because if I address that issue, and I haven't let you all know that that might be an issue, then I'm going to get a lot of grief for not allowing you to brief that issue. So that's why I'm giving you an advance notice on that. How do you feel about the afternoon of June 27? Given what's happening just quite recently, we might want to do that in person. I'm willing to do it remotely, but then we have to, there are a lot of different interests.
We are approaching the bottom of the hour, but don't worry, you're not going to miss a thing. We're going to hit that pause button for you. As accused mass killer Bryan Kohberger is in court for the first appearance after being indicted by that special grand jury last week. We'll be right back.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, the latest out of today's hearing in the Idaho college student murders. Last week, a grand jury indicted the suspect in the killing of 4 University of Idaho students, a case that shook a small town and captured the nation's attention.
A quadruple homicide in Moscow, Idaho, it's just unheard of.
We'll show you the biggest moments as we preview what's next. Court TV teams are live from Idaho with the key takeaways.
Closing Arguments, tonight at 8/7 Central, only on Court TV.
All we do is true crime.
From victim...
It was here at this off-campus home where all 4 students were brutally stabbed.
All the way to verdict.
Guilty.
Some of the most important and compelling cases across the country.
Watching things unfold.
From beginning to end.
This is a missing persons case that feels so different.
Whenever we gear up for our next big trial, you know there's going to be something you haven't seen before.
Do you have an idea for a story you would like to see or a comment on our coverage you want to share? We want to hear from you. Call our Scripps News viewer hotline at 833-4SCRIPPS. That's 833-4SCRIPPS.
Stream your favorite shows, movies, and original series on Brown Sugar.
This city gonna remember me.
Enjoy a 1-week free trial when you download the Brown Sugar app on your smart devices.
There's a better way to begin your mornings.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Morning Rush. Thanks so much for being with us.
Context and conversation.
There's a new study that might make you feel a little bit better. Okay. So listen to this.
On the stories that will shape each day.
Here with us now is meteorologist Scott Withers. You got just wave after wave after wave.
So you can get on with yours.
Make sure you stay with us as we monitor this developing story.
Morning Rush. Weekday mornings starting at 7/6 Central. Only on Scripps News.
For over 100 years, this light has shined. Through generations of Americans, this light carries on.
Reporting from Ukraine, Scripps News.
A beacon of the free American press. Reporting the facts, telling the whole story. This light illuminates, it informs, and now shines even brighter. Scripps News.
Dreaming of changing the world is one thing. Building the community to actually do it, that's real. Sometimes we need to come together to elevate higher. Introducing Bounce Community, a new bond between Bounce and you. Together we celebrate, engage, and empower. Together through partnership outreach, each month we'll spotlight people making impactful change, giving back, spreading love, elevating the community. Bounce Community. To get started, go to bouncetv.com/community.
What y'all watching? Whatever you like. Hello, somebody. Okay.
That's the only channel comes in clear around here.
That show is still on? They're on season 49.
Shocking, yet exhilarating.
Look at go. Won't he do it? Yes, it will.
Wheels up in 30. Let's go, let's go. Let's dig deep, figure out who we're dealing with.
We're ready to get the profile. He's growing bolder and more careless. There's no doubt he'll strike again.
I want this guy.
There's nothing the FBI does better than a manhunt.
Oh, wait, there he is.
Drive, go!
You said you were good at your job because you think through every outcome. Well, guess what? So do I.
Bring him in.
FBI, nobody move.
We got him.
Criminal Minds and FBI, Mondays on ION.
What was it like to hear something so shocking happened in your small town?
It was really wild. I mean, Moscow is so small, and you think it's a really safe community. Like, it was just really shocking to hear about that.
Do you think he did it, or you think justice is served?
I don't know. I think the evidence definitely points to it. So I'm really interested to see how they build the case and what they present.
And welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Matt Johnson, in today for Judge Ashley Wilcott. October 2nd, write it down. That's the date that a judge has set for Brian Kohberger, the man accused of brutally killing 4 University of Idaho students last fall. After his arraignment earlier, a scheduling conference and motions hearing was held. Let's pick back up where we left off.
In on that, so it might be better to be in person, but does that work for you, say, starting at 1:30, June 27th, Mr. Carone?
Yes, Your Honor, that works for me, and Ms. Olson and myself can both come in person. We would have been there today in person, but we found out about the in-person option on Friday, so I apologize for using Zoom today, but we can certainly be there in person. If the court's anticipating hearing from witnesses that day to hold an evidentiary hearing, there may be some witnesses that would want to appear via Zoom if that's okay with the court, but I'm not sure if that's even something you're contemplating. I'm just flagging it in case you are.
Well, let me put it this way. It's your motion and others' motions, and one of the complaints that I've seen in the briefing is that there's no evidence in the case supporting any of it. You know, we're all kind of moving forward on supposition, I guess. And some of it is obvious, but I think that would be wise. I suppose you could just file declarations, and that's what's been how that's been going. I might, if we're going to have a lot of testimony, I might want to move this back to 10 a.m. just to make sure that we have enough time to get things finished that day. Would that work for you?
Sure. So our position on the evidentiary issue is, your summary was correct, that we don't believe that there is an adequate factual record at this point. Given that it is our motion and it's based on the record that existed when the order was issued, procedurally, I'm not really sure there is an opportunity for additional evidence to be put forth. I only brought that up because I saw in Mr. Kohberger's opposition to our motion for reconsideration that there was a mention of an expert witness. If that evidence was going to come forward or other evidence, we of course would want the opportunity to cross-examine that individual or whatever individuals might be testifying. But, you know, as things currently stand for the record as it exists and the evidence that Media Coalition intends to put forward, we included a declaration with our motion. I'm not sure there's really need for us to put on additional evidence, but if that's something the court was going to hear from the state of Mr. Kohberger, then I just wanted to bring that to the court's attention.
Thank you, Mr. Corona. Of course, you'd have the opportunity to cross-examine any witness. All right. Well, we'll stay at 1:30 then. So now, Mr. Gray. So I'm thinking that maybe we should keep these things together and do them the same day if that works for you and your clients.
Well, Your Honor, I see the issue very clearly different from the AP's motion versus my motion. I think their motion is more of a getting rid of the non-dissemination order, the gag order. My motion is a motion to amend and or clarify some of the issues in the gag order. They have a lot of constitutional different issues that we have. I have some issues that I think are very separate. So I would request a hearing on my own much sooner. I think the court's aware I filed this motion in February on this case, and there was a massive delay based on the fact that the previous judge, Judge Marshall, was waiting for the Supreme Court to get some clarification regarding the AP's motion that she filed with the Supreme Court. So I'm ready to go when the court's ready to go, but I think our issues are very, very different than that of the AP's motion on this case. So I would request a hearing much sooner I can do it by the end of this week.
All right. Well, and I recognize this was all pretty short notice for everybody. And I don't know if, let me go to Mr. Rudley and then Mr. Logsdon, because they're going to weigh in on that motion as well, I'm assuming. I'm thinking about maybe June 9th would be the soonest I could do this, but let me go to you, Mr. Logsdon.
Your Honor, we'd be ready to go and would expect to put on an evidentiary presentation for that week of the 26th. To the extent that Mr. Gray wants to have this motion heard ahead of time, and just based on what I've read in it, I mean, obviously, if the court were to agree with some of the things that he says.
Into the mic, I guess.
Sorry. Obviously, if the court were to agree with some of the things that he says and winds up amending the order, that could change everything for everybody else. So to some extent, I think it actually is probably better to do them all at the same time, just so the court isn't in piecemeal changing what we're all arguing about. But I would be ready for the 9th if the court chose to do it that way.
No judge likes to do things piecemeal. But I also understand that Mr. Gray and his clients have been waiting for a long time now. It's not anybody's fault. It's just how that came down, because the Associated Press et al. Went straight to the Supreme Court in February, early February, and that would trigger a delay, which it did, and it was important, I think, for Judge Marshall to get the direction from the Idaho Supreme Court before we start, chipping away at each order. I don't know if would you be. I mean, I'm okay setting it for June 9th, Mr. Gray, but you may have some testimony happening. You may want to wait until you hear what everybody else is saying. It's likely that there's going to be some adjustments, you might say, or clarifying in the order. Partly in my reading of the Supreme Court's decision, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but there were some hints maybe of what the trial court might want to consider. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Gray.
I was going to say, since this is your gag order now, this non-dissemination order, Your Honor, and in reading my motion, if the court does want to consider making some of the modifications that might have been suggested in my motion, my motion may end up being moot. I think some of my modifications and or clarifications to the non-dissemination order are fairly minor, but allows, and I think the Supreme Court did give some guidance, which I think added weight to my arguments and my motion. So it's not above the court to take a look at my motion as well as any other motions that have been submitted to the court and modify the non-dissemination order, allowing for some of the issues that I've discussed in my motion, and then you would only have the AP who are attacking, I think, the gag order as a whole, the non-dissemination order as a whole. I'm just addressing a couple of clarifications and amendments that would allow myself as an attorney to speak on behalf of my clients that regarding the non-dissemination order, and I think it's your order now, so you're more than apt to be able to go and make those changes, and then we wouldn't have an issue with the non-dissemination order at all. So I don't think that's, so obviously the 9th, I'd like to keep the 9th because my issues are very small and narrow regarding that non-dissemination order, but if you were to make changes to those ahead of time that I was able to review and it was acceptable, I would withdraw my motion, Your Honor.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Gray.
Thank you.
Well, it would be highly unlikely for me to change the order before I hear from counsel. because I don't want it, you know, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. I only want to do this once. And I'm happy to set it for June 9th, maybe 10:30. Does that work for you?
That does, Your Honor.
Okay. Does that work for you, Mr. Rudley?
Yes, Your Honor, it does.
Okay. Mr. Logston?
We'll make it work, Judge.
Okay. Let's do that in person. Okay. So now we have the June 9th at 10:30. We also have the Associated Press et al. On June 27th at 1:30. I assume that works for you, Mr. Rudley?
It does, Your Honor.
Okay.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, excellent.
Your Honor, may I just speak?
Yes, Mr. Corona.
Your Honor, I apologize. I may have misunderstood what you said earlier. I was understanding that the week of June 26th was when the court was first available, but if the court is available to hear our motion earlier, we would be available on June 9th as well. I know that our most recent motion is pending more recently, but obviously we've been challenging this since February as well. It's our position that the non-dissemination order violates the Associated Press and Media Coalition's First Amendment rights. Those constitutional violations are irreparable, so we would like our motions to be heard as soon as possible as well. If I suggested otherwise by agreeing to the week of the 26th.
Raised forehead, slightly nodding, much so that you might miss it if you weren't looking for it. Not much expression at that defense table, right? From the former criminology PhD student now facing 4 counts of murder. More on the Brian Kohberger hearings out of Idaho when we come back.
On the next episode of Accomplice to Murder.
I'm going to end this live. I think we've covered all the pertinent information here and delivered what, was intended. Everybody wanted to see inside that courtroom, see Brian, see how his demeanor was, see what was happening in that courtroom. We didn't anticipate a lot. We didn't get a lot. A little bit of a surprise that he decided to go the silent route, but that was known to be a possibility. So, June 9th, the motion will be heard on the gag order. And June 27th, we'll hear from the court again regarding some other motions. So, we will be on the case looking for documents. I will continue to cover it. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Check out some of those earlier videos if you will. And you can see some of the really heavy topics we've discussed, as well as some other interesting characters in the area, and why they remain interesting, as well as some of the evidence heard in this case. Stay tuned. Thanks again for watching, and always be safe.